Today on the Hangout, we recap the Toronto Raptors' epic fail in Round 2, Game 1, plus scary Terry Rozier and his Celtics up 1 on the process. And what is going on in San Antonio? Hangout! Basketball fans, welcome into Canada's home for talking hoops. This is the Hangout. I am Akil Augustine, and much like you, this morning was rough. The Toronto Raptors had it in the palm of their hand and slipped out by overtime. And to break that down, of course, we got to welcome in our 3 panelists. Someone who was all too close to the action last night, Dan Gladman. I'm not even going to ask you a question yet. I'll let you sit there, wallow for a bit. We'll get to you later. I like the shirt. They did their job. This is the infamous Nate Burleson. Shouts out. Donovan Bennett of Sportsnet fame. How you doing, buddy?
You look like the morning was rough.
It was rough.
You look like you listened to Marvin's Room on repeat.
I didn't have time to put real clothes on.
Just didn't know what was going on.
I didn't even put real clothes on. I'm just going to go hoop and get some shots up like DeMar does. And, of course, the official voice of the 905, Meg McPeak. Girl, what a tough night.
Man, oh man.
All right, so here's the question. Here's what we're going to start with. And we'll start with you, Donovan. The Raps lose in overtime, and my question is, what happened from your perspective?
It's funny because everyone's talking about the OT, the end of regulation. I want to bring it back to the end of the first half.
Okay.
And I really feel like at the end of that second quarter, beginning of the third quarter, there were opportunities to stretch that lead from 14 to 20, 25, and really end the game. I almost feel like when you're playing LeBron, you're running the 200 on a curve, but Bolt is behind you. Like, you really need to extend that lead. And I didn't feel comfortable the entire time watching. I don't know what the building felt like, but I feel like they blew chances to blow them out, and that was the biggest factor for me.
The interesting stat, this is the first time in NBA history that a team did not lead Dan Gladman during regulation and won a game. You were producing the broadcast. You were real up close. You probably got some Kendrick Perkins and Drake saliva on you. What did you think?
Well, first of all, have you been home in the last couple days? I mean,
these are my clothes, guys.
It looks like you've been
kind of like ball is life.
Maybe couch surfing.
I do that too.
Okay.
I do that too.
I mean, look, it was a devastating loss. Toronto still feels it this morning.
Where do you place the blame?
I mean, I don't place blame. I do think Donovan just raised an interesting thought, and I hadn't thought of it, about pushing that lead in the first half. You know, Jack Armstrong always talks about closing quarters strong, especially in the playoffs. And some nights the Raptors have done that, and some nights they haven't. They did not close the second quarter strong, but even still in the third and fourth quarter, they had leads. They just missed shots in the fourth quarter, shots that they always make. So I don't think there really is any blame. I don't think they really have to do too much different offensively. I think they played a great game. They just missed all these shots in the fourth quarter and overtime that cost them this glorious opportunity.
I think in one stretch they missed 15 of 16 shots, Megan.
Yeah, and kind of to piggyback on what Donovan said. For me,
Donovan, you're getting a lot of love.
Yes. When it comes to the Cavs, the one chance that you have, because let's be real, LeBron plays, 44 of the 48 minutes last night? Almost 45 minutes. For those 3 to 4 minutes he goes out, that is your chance. You leave DeMar on, you leave Kyle on, and you go for the jugular. There's no
So you weren't
reason.
a fan of the rotations?
I wasn't, not last night. That's where you take advantage.
My friend Vidal said the exact same
of LeBron not being on the floor. You need to take advantage. You have the lead, extend it, like I said, put your foot on the jugular and end it.
And before I move on to the next question Dwayne wants me to ask, I got my own personal beef here. DeMar DeRozan, I love the guy. I think he's one of the greatest Toronto sports stories ever. But he seems to really be committed to hitting this game-winning shot. And I think I watched the scrum prior to the final possession, and I've seen so many end-of-game situations where DeMar goes to the same space. And I think teams recognize that. And he was forced to give up the ball to Fred VanVleet. But also, he kind of slowed down their offense. Does any of the responsibility fall on DeMar for kind of trying to be the guy too much, Donovan?
No, because we weren't saying that when he went end-to-end against the Pistons and two-hand dunked on their whole team.
But that was in the half-court set where he massaged the ball looking for screens.
True, but it's interesting that that's what you made out of that, because I thought well, this looks like the DeMar who got to the basket and kicked it to Fred in the corner to win against the Pistons, and kicked it to Fred twice at the end of regulation and in OT for wide open shots that maybe if Fred's shoulder is right, the first one was wide left, or maybe if he's just been in that spot before, or maybe it's just law of averages, but normally you expect him to knock down. So I didn't mind his decision making, because for me it wasn't hero ball. He made the right play twice in a big spot.
We've been killing them for the ISO ball and the hero ball for years. There were 3 passes that DeRozan kicked out in the late game scenarios. Van Vliet
But they weren't traditional ball movement passes. They were him trying.
He kind of got open man for a wide open shot. All they had to do was hit one of those shots, and it's ball game.
But my thing with that is I put some of the onus in that situation for both of those shots on Coach Casey. You can't have Fred sit on the bench in the fourth quarter when you are going to potentially put him in late in the game, when you know he's got a bum shoulder. He hurt it earlier in the game. We saw him trying to work it out. He had heat on it. You've got to let him, if the guy's shoulder is sore and it's bothering him, it needs to warm up within the game in order to hit that shot.
We don't know right now that his shoulder is the reason.
I'm not saying it is, but I put some of the onus for Fred not being in the game, because we've seen all season Fred's been in the game to close the fourth quarter out. Why was he not in the game earlier in the fourth quarter to close out in regulation?
All right, so here's my question. Does game 1, I'll start with you, Dan Glavin, change how you perceived this series playing out?
No, it doesn't change it, because I thought going in game 1 is vitally important to both teams.
You thought the Raptors were going to lose game 1?
I wasn't sure who was going to win or lose, but I knew that if the Raptors lost game 1, that same old pressure and anxiety is there. And if the Cavs won game 1, it gives them a bit of a break here going home. They don't have to worry about going home down 2-0 and tired. And
You're doing your best to avoid answering my question, and I appreciate that.
I answer all your questions.
Okay,
I do.
Donovan, for you, does the result from game 1 change how you perceive this series?
It does. I feel like it's more than just a 1-0 deficit at this point. I think it's more than just losing one game. It's almost like soccer in its aggregate. And it's like a road loss, a road goal. Because you had extra prep time. You had extra rest. You were able to play your cards, which worked beautifully for 3.5 quarters. Now I almost feel like not only did they get the win in a game that LeBron didn't play well, they didn't play well as a team, they being the Cavs, but also they lucked into a strategy. Tristan Thompson didn't start the game, and he was on the bench for long stretches to close it, but they figured out that, yeah, we need him on the boards. And he kept JV less than a point per shot in the playoffs last year. He did a good job on him this year. I think it's a big loss, and now you got to go and get one on the road in Cleveland. I think it totally changes the complexion of the series.
For you?
I think in a way it does, and not so much for the fact that they'd lost, but how they lost. One of the worst collapses in playoff history. Credit Tristan Thompson for the work he did on Jonas Valanciunas. I think JV was like 4 of 10 when Tristan Thompson was guarding him. Prior to that, with Tristan on the bench, he was, I think, 15 points straight and 10 rebounds to close the game out. So you can see what Tristan Thompson does for the way that he defends Jonas Valanciunas. But I think it comes down to how they lost that game and not the fact that they did lose the game.
Who you got how many?
I still have the Cavs in 7.
Donovan?
Raptors in 7.
Well, I'm not even going to bother
Raps
asking
in
you.
7,
Go to
man.
commercial. Forget Dan. Dan's got Raptors in 13. Shouts out to TT, though. That's my guy, man. Honestly, he's going
That was funny.
I love him. Still more to come here in our home for Talking Hoops. Scary Terry Rozier is doing his thing. We will break down the Sixers and the Celtics. Shouts out to Rick and Morty for providing the best nickname in sports right now. Hang on!